I could have never have imagined how my words were going to stay in kids' lives. You know, and they could come back and recite exactly what I said at halftime of this game, or exactly what I said to them, you know, and in a way it is flattering, and, you know, most of them are very positive and stuff, but it always makes me just kind of shudder, because thinking, how many stupid things did I say?
Oh, man.
How many things did I say in a moment of emotion that served me and not my players? How many times did I say something that stuck in some kid's head that isn't positive? So for me, it was like, oh my goodness, I hope I did a good job.
I'm Kyle Vierck, and this is the Know Your Leading Edge podcast.
I didn't really even see him as much as a coach as I just saw him as a teacher. And I think, you know, and then I had probably the coach model in my life was my high school football coach, Fran Risch, who they named the stadium after.
Yeah,
over there.
How about that? Okay.
Yeah, and Coach Risch and his wife Betty lived across the alley from us when I was born.
Really?
And so my mom used to say that whenever she couldn't find me, I had walked over to Risch's and was eating cookies. I mean, I'd be like 2 years old, and where is he? Oh, he must be over at Risch's. So Risch knew me from the time I was born, and so you know, so I'd watched him coach, and I'd been around him. I was his bat boy when I was old enough to go with the team and travel and stuff, you know. So he was a big influence in my life, and again, just positive energy. Loved what he did. It was like my dad gave me great advice, and I probably from his own experience, he said, you got to go one of two ways. He said, either get a profession where you make so much money that you can enjoy every single bit of your spare time, or get a job where you don't care at all how much money you make. Yeah. And so I chose the latter. I perfectly happy. I was teaching in the public school for public school my whole career until I was finished at 30 years. And I actually, at the time my 30th year came up, the state of Washington, in an effort to get rid of some of the older teachers and not have to pay so many high salaries, actually penalized you in retirement if you went over 30 years. And so for me, that was a really tough decision. I did not want to leave. I did not want to stop teaching. I loved the school I was in, and it was a fantastic place. We had a great coaching team and teaching team and fabulous kids, and I just wasn't ready. And the truth is, I might still have been teaching if that hadn't been there. I mean, I'm 76, and I might have still been teaching. I just loved it that much. If somebody would have made me choose, Kyle, between teaching and coaching, I mean, yes, most of my attention came from coaching.
Right.
But that's not why I did it. If somebody would have made me choose between teaching and coaching, I would have chosen teaching without even thinking about it in a heartbeat. You know, coaching basketball, for example, is just gifted physical education. That's all that really is. Right. Football is just gifted physical education. And, you know, I was able to impact, 12, 15 kids a year in basketball and maybe 100 in football. But in teaching, you're going to impact hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of kids every single year. And there wasn't anything I took the same approach to teaching as I did to coaching, with positive motivation, positive conditioning, with, the same motivational styles, the same emphasis on effort and attitude. All that stuff was completely the same in physical education as it was in teaching, in coaching.
The positive conditioning stuff, I remember when I first was able to sit and listen to your ideas around positive conditioning. And that's something that I've carried into nearly every environment that I can think of. The idea of really being able to make significance out of the people who are doing the most work and the hardest work. I mean, almost everybody is totally surprised initially when I've had the chance to implement that, right? And I've always, since learning that concept from you, I've just been amazed at how wonderfully it impacts young people. Like when they get the idea that we're, so in the soccer context, we would just do something that you taught me, right? Which is to say, and maybe some variation of it. I can't be you, so it was whatever my interpretation of that was. But we were just having sprints, and then if you won, or if you were the last one, then you were out, and we just kept working down. And it was so much fun to me to watch them all be around and cheering on those last efforts, and the idea that I earned the opportunity to even do more.
Yeah, it's interesting because I don't talk on that very much anymore, Kyle. And I never talked on it very much even when I was doing it because it's so different. And so you almost had to get people into the understanding the rest of the philosophy of coaching to understand how that fits in. Because it would come across really strange. If I was going back to some place for the fourth or fifth time, that would start coming up.
Yeah.
And the other reason it's not being spoken about very much anymore is even our other speakers said, I never did that. And until you've done it, I shouldn't speak on it. And I'm happy with that, so whenever anybody buys that DVD on that, I always send them an email and say, look, this is really different. So call anytime. Okay. Just anytime from the very first time you think about it till what's not working or finding a better way, just call. And I'll get tons of people that buy that and then call and say, oh my gosh, this is crazy. How impactful, how effective this is. So, yeah.
Well, can you plug that I would love for more people to be impacted by the work that you've done there. I mean, I feel like I managed to get a duet with our staff when we were here, but there's probably still things that aren't in my notes that I could still benefit from it. So is that still available? Is it something?
Yeah, it's still available. We're streaming that we're switching from DVD to streaming, which is, I think going to be better for everybody, but, it's still available, and it's so different that it's really not worth getting into other than to say, if you really understand it, it really works. Okay. And you'll never do it any way differently. Taking conditioning from being a negative or a punishment kind of a mentality into an absolutely a privilege to be do the conditioning work. And I've got right now, currently, somebody asked me the other day, so I actually counted up. I have 83 former players who are now coaching.
Wow.
And I would guess that probably most of them are all using it.
Really?
Yeah. Some are just coaching youth sports, but they're probably not because there isn't a lot of them. But yes, I would guess that most of them are using it. And so I'll get calls from them saying, Coach, okay, I remember doing this, but I don't remember how you got us there.
Got it.
And so those are always good conversations.
That's great. Well, it's been wildly, even in my best efforts to employ what I think I learned from you, it's been wildly successful in every environment that I've been able to bring it out, and to watch young people really appreciate what it does and how it motivates and changes the culture was really awesome. So yeah. I'm still grateful to have learned that from you every time I put it out there.
Mm-hmm. So back to kind of how I got here on the path.
Yeah.
So when I had the 30 year and I had to retire, even though I wasn't ready to, you could retire and draw retirement and still go to a private school and get a salary. So I had an opportunity to go to Bellevue Christian School as an athletic director.
Okay.
And then I went from there to Northwest College as an athletic director.
Got it.
I had people talk to me before about getting into administration earlier in my career. And I just didn't want to. I felt like I got into education because of young people, and every step you take further away from teaching, you're that much further from the kids that you chose to be there with.
For sure.
And very honestly, I liked both those schools. I learned a ton. I had some good experiences there. I had some very good successes there. But being an athletic director is basically all you really do is put out other people's problems. You're just putting out fires constantly, and they're problems that that you didn't cause in most cases, And again, I was that much further away from young people. Actually, at the college level, I felt like I was actually closer to kids being a college AD was actually a little bit simpler for me than being a high school athletic director. You didn't have the freshman, sophomore JV teams.
Yeah.
The kids were, had pretty much grown up and their parents were around, but they weren't present all the time. It was for me, it was a little bit, more enjoyable, I think, doing that.
Was it because the parents were less involved at that level? Maybe
I think so. That was and the kids are liking that. They're the first time they've got all this freedom, and so you're dealing with people who are really happy to be there, and sometimes they're looking at their athletic experience differently than they've ever seen it before because now it's theirs solely, and they've achieved where they really wanted to go to get a chance to go play in college, and that's the goal for an awful lot of kids, and so they've achieved that. And so there was a lot of really good things about high school, but you're out almost every night. You're gone almost every single night of the year, with events or even if it's not home games, it's away games and stuff.
So you go from this idyllic profession of teaching that feels vocationally a perfect match from you. You start to move into administration, but then how do you launch Proactive, and how do you take the step? Like, what was the driving force that took you into an entrepreneur and a place really that you've taken the business now all these years later?
Kyle, I actually started before I was done teaching.
Okay.
So I started in the mid 80s, early to mid 80s. I started getting asked to come speak at coaching clinics. And basically, because coaches are some of the biggest skeptics you'll ever present to.
Sure.
Because there's so many ways to coach, and there isn't just one way. And most people think they can do it really well. So breaking into that crowd is not easy. And I wasn't even trying to, but I started getting asked to come speak at coaching clinics because my teams did real well.
Right.
Okay. That's why you get invited. Your teams have been so successful. Come tell us your secrets. Come tell us how you defend this or that, or tell me about the inbound plays you run, or, all that kind of stuff. And so I was doing that, pretty consistently in the mid 80s. And I was speaking at some pretty large clinics on the West Coast. And I was down at one called the NorCal Clinic, which is in the San Francisco area, and it was huge. And I'd been down there about probably 4 years or so, enough time that I had gotten to know the people who were running it real well and comfortable enough for me to go talk to them. And, so I remember going and talking to them and saying, I love being here. I love talking about the technical parts of the game. I'm always honored to be part of this. But the truth is, I don't think it's the technical parts of the game that are allowing us to win. And they all kind of sat back and said, talk to us. What is it? What are you doing? So I started talking about the character-based coaching philosophy and approach to everything, and all the different things that we were doing with our teams beyond X's and O's. And they said, you start talking on that. And that was a real breakthrough, because at that time there were only a few people talking about, and I don't think I'm not a sports psychologist, and I'm not a motivational I just talking about teaching. Coaching is teaching, and the way we taught. At that time, there were a few sports psychologists that were speaking on non-X's and O's topics. Tom Tutko was great.
Okay.
Anyway, so that really opened up. So I started doing that for them, and they were like, okay, this is really important and impactful. And we started packing them in more and more and more. And so that's how it kind of started. And then it just has grown by word of mouth. And I think God's hand was on the whole thing, is just kind of saying, okay, let me open this door. Let me open this door. So really, I wasn't doing anything different than teaching. I don't see myself as I'm actually a pretty shy person. Unless I'm talking about something I have a passion about.
Sure.
And then I'm just fine.
Sure.
Okay. But as far as, there's some friends of mine that can't even believe I get out and speak in front of 10 people, much less 10,000. And they're like, no way. And it's like, well, if I was talking about something I didn't love, I wouldn't even think about it. So that's kind of how it's gone.
That's good. Perfect timing. Honey, you'll be able to figure it out. Go ahead. Thank you.
So anyway, that's
really, so you start to get into the place that you're really talking about the things that you love and appreciate. And now it just starts to snowball.
yeah.
You've written books. You've been the NAIA and is it the Champions of Character? Is that what the program was called? So can you tell me about like, how did that, I'm trying to understand all the timeline, right, Bruce? Cause everything in my mind is like, just so you know, right? Like no microphones or anything. Like, as I've said to you, every time that I've had a chance to be with you, I really feel as though I'm looking at a person who's your Yoda in my life. I'm some small person who's just trying to find a way to be impactful in my life. And I look out at the work that you've done, and I just wish someday I might be able to glance at some of that. And how did you manage to just continue to build? And also, this is kind of an odd question that I struggle with, but when did you decide that or did you even decide that what you were saying, that it was okay for you to say those things? I'm 44 now, Bruce, and I'm not sure. I've wondered for the longest time when it was okay to say, I think I've accumulated enough knowledge to share.
You know, it's funny. I had a junior high school when I very first started teaching and coaching. I was in a junior high school, 7th, 8th, 9th grade, and I was coaching 9th graders. And matter of fact, one of the teams that I coached when I very first started is coming up here for another reunion. They come up every year, and they're coming up on the 23rd of July. And this year they're calling it their Medicare reunion. They're all 65 years old. Okay. It's this whole team of guys who they just love each other. Anyway, I was, and it might have been even those guys because it was one of my first 4 or 5 years of teaching. I had a principal come up to me and say, Bruce, I need to talk to you. And so I was like, great. So he said, I've sat in on some of your stuff and it looks like you're teaching character in football. It looks like you're actually doing some character stuff in football. And I was like, yeah. And he said, you need to be careful. You need to be careful that you don't cross the line. And I didn't even ask for explanation. I just was I was left and I was like, wow, wait a minute. What was he saying? And I thought, I was processor, so I was just kind of thinking about it before I even was going to go back and talk to him about it. And I think what he was saying is, be careful. There's a fine line there in a public school of teaching kids about character. And at first I was kind of bothered by it. Like, am I really doing something wrong? And then I thought about it and I thought, you know what I'm doing is exactly right for kids. And it made me double my efforts. I actually increased. And then I spent some time talking with him about not only what I was doing and why I was doing it, but how I was doing it. And he actually became a real big fan because he saw the difference it was making in kids' lives. So, that was one thing. So, I was doing quite a bit of speaking, not quite a bit. I was speaking pretty consistently when I was still teaching. And then when I left public school and I ended up at Northwest College, which is now Northwest University, it was an NAI school. And I got a call from one of the administrators in the NAI and said, well, I'd like to come out to Kirkland and meet you. And so he came out and he said, we've got this new concept for a program called Champions of Character. We want to brand ourselves, the NAI, as a place you can go that you can, play, but also have character development within the athletic arena. And he said, so we have this concept, and I heard you got the content. Wow. And so I was like, okay, let's talk about this. And then they flew me back to Tulsa, where their headquarters were at that time, and I met with the CEO and all those people, and they offered me a job to be their national spokesman for the Champions of Character program. So we spoke on, we have presentations. I think we have about 15 different presentations, but we had about probably 6 or 7 that were main presentations, some for athletes, some for team leaders, some for coaches, most for coaches, and one for parents. And so for about 8 years, I left Northwest. Actually, the first year I did halftime AD at Northwest and halftime travel. And the NAI said, we'll pay you to go full time. So I was traveling about 14 to 15 days a month for the NAI and visiting all these little small, beautiful campuses around the country. There's so many different NAI schools, and it's just so many different locations and stuff, and so many great people. And so I was traveling with the vice president of the NAI, Rob Miller. And he was the head of Champions of Character. So he would travel with me and introduce me and that kind of stuff. And he actually, I think he found out how much energy it took to do that, because we'd land somewhere and we'd do, 4 or 5 hours of presentations. And so he started traveling with me, and so he would drive. And so that was great. So we'd land in one place and we'd present, and then we would get in the car that night and drive and land in the next place and spend the night there, and then get up and present and drive to the next place. And we'd do about 6 days in a row, and we'd make a couple trips like that in 1 month. And so poor Rob, I mean, because they wanted me to basically do the same presentations, the introductory presentations everywhere we went. Poor Rob, he had to listen to the same things over and over and over and over. And he asked me one time, he said, how do you bring that much energy when you're doing it for the 6th time, or you're into hour 5 or 6 on the same day? I said, Rob, that's exactly what teaching is. You have 5 or 6 classes. You're all in the same part of a specific unit. Yeah. And so you're basically teaching the same thing over 5 or 6 times. And each class comes in with brand new kids who deserve the same amount of energy and the same amount of enthusiasm and investment from me. So I said, that's just left over from teaching. That's just something you learn to do. So, and it was funny because, Rob and I became great friends, very trusted man, very trustworthy man. So what I started doing is almost at every single presentation, I'd add something new. I'd just throw in one or two new things, and we'd get in the car and say, okay, what was it? Anyway, we transitioned so after about 8 years of doing that, we were only, and proactive coaching was still going on. And we were only able to fill about 40% of the requests we were getting for proactive coaching, because the rest of my time was spent with NAI schools. Right. And so we both decided to kind of step away from the NAI and that program, that we would still do stuff with them and for them and stuff, but not on that level and not on that time frame. And so Rob came with us and became our partner at Proactive Coaching. And then now we're passing the torch to Rob. We're at a point where I'm not traveling nearly as much as I used to. Now I'm traveling very little, basically just long-term relationships and friendships. And Rob lives on a plane. And so he is, and because he had heard the presentation so many times, he does it better than I ever did. So it's like, he's just killing it. And it's been a great transition. We want this, one of our goals, Kyle, was to have this, what we teach live beyond us. Yeah. That's kind of what we're in the process of doing right now.
Yeah, I mean, you're hitting all the questions that I had written, really thinking around legacy as you get into the transition points of your life, thinking through like what the legacy you really wanted to leave was. I wonder if you can, cause just like you have a tree of athletes, pupils, now coaches, I have a much smaller tree that grows underneath your tree. But I wonder, and so because of that, my hope with this podcast too, is be able to continue to minister to those young people who have moved on in different stages of their lives. That maybe they're just emerging to their 30s, their 40s, as they're starting to come through this. And I wonder, as you look at what has been a magnificent journey, what maybe the dark edges have been for you, and maybe the pieces of advice you would offer a 30, a 40, a 50, who's transitioning and maybe aspires to be a coach of impact in their lives, but what that can mean on the other side of the coin.
Yeah, coaching is not easy. Coaching is a difficult profession. Most people think it's easy until they do it, until they get into it. When you coach, you're investing in kids' lives. When you invest in kids' lives, they become yours. Those kids become our sons and daughters.
Yeah.
I mean, that they really do. I wouldn't say it's the dark side. I'd just say it's part of when you work with young people. They're going to disappoint you sometimes. You're going to be disappointed sometimes on decisions they make, on choices or paths that they take. And it's going to hurt you just like it hurts you as a parent when your kid takes a step that they shouldn't have taken or makes a decision that isn't good. Very honestly, you're also going to be, during my teaching career, I had to deal with 4 suicides. Okay. Those are my kids. So when you deal with young people, when you deal with people in general, you're going to go through tough times with them that you didn't experience with your own family. And so it's kind of like being a step parent is what it is. That you love them, but they're not really yours, but you still love them.
Yeah.
And, there's so many good things that come out of it and so many positives. And what you don't realize is I have a bunch of athletes that have stayed in my life for 50 years and 40 or 50 years. And I see them real frequently, and I hear from them even more often than that. There's a whole group that comes up here every year, about 80 of them that play golf. They're all teammates from the same school, and they have big golf tournament barbecue up here every year. And, so it's very interesting as this has gone, as I've transitioned to kind of being a grandpa now, the conversations that come up from these players. I could have never have imagined how my words were going to stay in kids' lives. And they could come back and recite exactly what I said at halftime of this game, or exactly what I said to them, and in a way it is flattering, and, most of them are very positive and stuff, but it always makes me just kind of shudder because thinking, how many stupid things did I say?
Oh, man.
How many things did I say in a moment of emotion that served me and not my players? How many times did I say something that stuck in some kid's head that isn't positive? So for me, it was like, oh my goodness, I hope I did a good job with as many as possible, but you didn't. You're going to make some mistakes. And when I run into coaches who are going through the same thing, I say, you need to, if you were doing your best at the time and you grew from that, you learned from that experience, you have enough of a growth mindset that you grow from every experience. I said, just forgive yourself and then move on and make changes, and so that the ones that you're interacting with from here on out are better. You asked me something about writing and how I got started in the writing.
Yeah.
I never saw myself as a writer. I was an English minor, so I wasn't a complete idiot. So I had a little bit of that background, but I never saw myself as a writer, and I still don't really see myself as a writer.
Okay.
I just write like I talk.
Yeah.
And some people say that's good, and some people go, you should be more flowery or whatever. It's like, no, that's not me. Just try to be concise. I try to write stuff that's concise and clear. Just like I coach, you try to say stuff in as few words as possible. So you're right back into activity. You train yourself to get across large concepts with few words. That you try to, I think part of coaching is to take complex concepts and make them appear simple to the kids. In other words, you've got all these concepts in your own head, and all it really is important is how much the kids are able to understand. So you take these complex concepts, and you try to make it so the kid goes, oh, I can do that. We can do that. That's simple. Okay. I've run across a lot of coaches who take simple concepts and make them really complex.
Oh, yeah.
And so I think that's kind of the way I write too. I try to take complex things and make them appear simple, but then try to give them some depth so that people can find them. But anyway, this was one of those never forget times. I had 2 interactions. I think that as all of us have mentors, like I talked about Rex Davis and Fran Risch and my dad and my uncle and that kind of stuff. But we also have what I call long distance mentors, people who you admired from a distance but maybe never met. And so, and I've been really blessed in my career, especially now that I was speaking, to have actually been able to meet and spend time with every one of the people who I would consider my long distance mentors.
Yeah.
Mike Krzyzewski, Dean Smith, John Wooden, Dick Vermeil. I've had a chance to, because they're either on the same stage or whatever, to actually spend time and tell them that the difference they made in my life. But John Wooden, of course, was the best of the best. And I got some, just amazing things that Coach Wooden, but I got asked to go down with him when I was with the NAI to speak at Fresno Pacific University down in Fresno, California. And they said the other speaker is going to be John Wooden. And it was like, no way. There's no way. Okay. And it was a thrill of a lifetime for me. There were only two of us. We alternated presentations for a day and a half. Kyle was 94 years old.
Holy smokes.
Not a hesitation, not a glitch, not a repeat. He's quoting poetry. It's like, who is this guy?
That's a deep man.
But physically, he was real frail.
Yeah.
And, he needed opening a sandwich. Hey, a little help on my wrapping. It's like, okay, But anyway, so the very first presentation I gave was one called Life Lessons for Athletes, which is, one of our standard ones. And I came back and sat down at the table with him. And he looked at me and he had been taking notes. John Wooden was taking notes.
Indeed,
He's 94. He's not going to coach again. He's taking notes. And I was like, it was one of the most humbling experiences of my life, thinking, first of all, that he even listened, much less. Anyway, he looked at me and he said, have you got that in writing? I said, no. He said, well, you need to get it in writing because I couldn't write fast enough. He said, you need to get that in writing. And it was like, okay, I can do that.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of how it started.
That's cool.
And, I've written books, a number of books, but I started writing booklets. And the booklets are basically a chapter. And again, it was just like not a plan. And as much as I talk to coaches about being intentional about everything, there's a lot of things that happened along my path that were just, just guided by the hand of God, just kind of, not something I was like, yeah, I planned how to do this. No, it just kind of did happen, So the booklets, I was speaking, and I had, my main book was called Teaching Character Through Sport, Developing a Positive Coaching Legacy. In there, I had life lessons and I had some other stuff in there. So I'd go and I'd speak to one audience, and it's like, if they wanted to get the support material for that one presentation, they had to buy the whole book.
Right.
And so it's like, okay, I'm going to take the ones out of there that I talk about the most, and I'm going to put them in a separate publication so people can, and oh my goodness, it was crazy. First of all, they were much, much cheaper. They're easier for me to get into print. The last book I wrote took 18 months to get published and into print.
Right.
And I could get these into print. I self-publish and I can get them into print, and, as soon as I'm done, it takes about 2 weeks to have the printer do it. They're easier to transport. Like I said, they're cheaper for coaches to buy. But I think the biggest thing is coaches are so busy, and their time is so valuable. Oftentimes I think they might buy a book and they look at it and they kind of shudder and, well, I'll get to that later, and they never really get to. Well, a booklet is somewhere between 16 and 40 pages, and they go, I can do that.
Sure.
So the feedback I got from coaches was, oh, I read that on the way home. Okay. So it was like, this is very readable. And then the other thing I think that we tried to do with our writing was, that I think separates us, I think, somewhat from writers. And this is just from being a coach is try to make everything applicable so that they can apply it immediately. So they can read stuff or hear the presentation, read the support material, and go, you know what? I can take that back and I can apply it with that youngster today. I can take that back and I can apply that to our team starting this afternoon. So that was kind of our goal, and that's kind of how we've gotten to that point. And I've ended up writing 25 booklets.
Wow.
And we've only got 14 and still in hard copy.
Okay.
And the rest of them are just downloadable. But we keep the ones in hard copy because we have a lot of people buy them in bulk and do a team study using them, or they do a staff study with their whole coaching staff. And we just had a Division I football team buy 150 compete booklets and 150 great teams booklets and 25 captains booklets. And the captains booklets are going to go to their leadership group, and the other ones are all going to be a team study that they're going to do for this fall camp. So that makes it possible for them to do that. So that's kind of, we keep the ones still in hard copy that will serve the team or serve a group.
Yeah. Man, that's awesome. I'm trying to think of where I want to take this. I'm so fascinated by how that all came together for you. And so putting that all into context, and here you are now, like, if you were able to, if I wanted to be a coach of impact, and you know me, somewhat personally, now we've had a relationship, goodness, I don't know, it's been like nearly 7 or 8 years at least. Mm-hmm. I mean, I was never one of your athletes or that. I'm not a part of your underneath the tree, although I get your guidance in the shade of your wisdom every day. So, quite personally for me, like, how can I, what are the steps that I might be able to make to be able to carry on even a degree of the kind of work? What's needed from young people in my position now to be able to continue to grow their own trees?
Well, first of all, I think I said when I first started speaking, there were just a few sports psychologists that were speaking, and they were coming from a sports psychology background and PhD and stuff. And I was basically speaking from experience based upon stuff that we had done that had been impactful. I think one of the things that gets coaches is, one of our phrases is, one athlete of character improves your team, one team of character changes your school, one school of character impacts your entire community.
Yeah. Okay.
One coach of significance impacts generations of those. And so it's kind of this ripple effect thing. But in order to catch coaches, I think one of the things that allowed us to gain traction with this is I honestly believe, and I saw this play out. I mean, like I said, people started asking us to speak because our teams had done real well. They want to know why you win. And I think anything you can do to improve the individual character of an athlete or the collective character of your team gives you a better chance for success in every single way, including the scoreboard. And so I think there's some people that are saying, I'll do that just because I want to win. And then they get into it and they find out, oh my gosh, this is changing kids' lives too. So for me, if I'm talking, right, but now after we've been doing this for 20 plus more years than that, there are a lot of people speaking on this.
Yeah.
And they're not sports psychologists. They're just people who have taken what we do or what other people do and have found a way to make it successful, and talking about the non-X's and O's part of the profession. And so there are a whole bunch of people out there duplicating it, and people will say, are those people your opponents of proactive coaching? And no, they're not at all. They're our allies. They're teaching a lot of the same stuff, but they're, anybody that's adding to a kid's athletic experience in the realm of characters is an ally. The only people there are a few that basically just plagiarize and paraphrase. And, that's not what this was about. So, but no, there are a whole lot of them. And every time, so I do get a lot of calls from people. I've had 2 this week from people who are trying to find a niche, and the niche needs to be something that you have an absolute passion about, or else it won't continue. You just won't continue it. You can't do this for the money.
Yeah.
There are a lot of places, Kyle, that will go and out, schools. Sometimes I'll go to some schools. I'm looking around at the kids and the families and at the situation, and I'll say, how many free and reduced lunches do you have here? And they'll go 95%. And I'll say, you take your fee you were going to pay me and put that in your in your athletic fund for kids who can't afford shoes or can't
Sure.
afford the pay for play or can't afford insurance or something. So, you can't be money driven, I think, and do what we do. You have to be mission driven. It has to be a mission that you love, a mission that you want to share, a mission that's going to be, that has a purpose higher than victory. And I think once you find that, I think then you just start thinking about how many ways can I approach this that will be helpful, and who are my target audiences? Who do I want to impact? And a target. Do you want to impact business leaders? Do you want to impact school administrators? Do you want to impact students, athletes, leadership? I mean, so identify some target audiences and then go get them. One young lady that I've known for quite a while because I worked with her team, and she has actually stepped out of coaching, and now she's doing mental health stuff with athletes.
Yeah.
And so knowing her and knowing how genuine she is, and knowing that she isn't just kind of taking advantage of the opportunity that's presented itself through COVID and all the attention that's been given to mental health of athletes. It's not that at all. This is a mission for her.
Yeah.
And you can just see it. Her heart is just in this so much. And I'll do everything I can to promote her to be successful. And again, I think she'll be real successful financially, but that's not where her paycheck is. It's just like coaching. Your paychecks have nothing to do with money. Your paychecks are going to kids' weddings and being called when they have their children of their own, and being invited to their children's weddings, and that kind of stuff. Having them stay in your life is the biggest paycheck.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I know the sense of that payment, and I remember as a young coach, waiting around on that page. Like, it felt early on as though I was just toiling for 5, 6, 8 years, with high school athletes. Yeah. And I wasn't sure if anything that I was doing was taking hold. I mean, I was working hard at it. We might have success, we might not on the field, these kinds of things. But I knew I was giving every ounce of the best that I had. But a lot of times these kids were 16 to 18, and they would make some good decisions, some not good decisions, and they could impact your ability to have a result. A party the night before the wrong game could mean everything that you had personally, professionally worked at as a coach could be done for the day. And then about 8 years into the journey, when finally one small piece of fruit was born of the tree, you thought, okay, well, that was nice. Can I get that slightly earlier than what I'm currently experiencing? Because it can be really, I felt, and I still sometimes to this day, knowing how deeply I care about the athletes in their stations in life, I still feel really lonely as a coach a lot of times, because I don't know until an athlete really, sometimes those seeds take years. How did you reconcile that early on? I mean, these guys who come back and play golf and barbecue, they couldn't have been such beautiful trees back then. How could you hang on long enough to see the fruit?
Well, when I was really busy teaching and coaching, one of the things I used to love to do was mow the lawn. Because you can mow the lawn and you turn around and you go, man, that looks good. You get this immediate reinforcement of, okay, I just accomplished something. That work is done. It was valuable work. Cause you didn't get that with kids very much, but, there are small paychecks along the way. Yeah. It's the kid that gets it. It's the kid that, comes to you with issues going on in their life that they're willing to trust you with, that maybe they're not willing to trust anybody else with. Very honestly, for me, Kyle, the most immediate paychecks I got while I was coaching, because most of them do take, like you say, 8 or 10 or more years than that. Most of the immediate paychecks that I got in coaching were athletes who were real challenges. Oh, they were just, all the other coaches who had had him and said, "Oh, this guy's a piece of work. You know, he's never going to get him to, you know, he'll never buy into all the stuff that you're doing and all that kind of stuff." For me, I loved working with those challenging athletes. For me, that was one of the most enjoyable things. The more challenged they were, the bigger challenge it was for me to be able to get them onto the right path. And so some of the most immediate paychecks were that kid making small changes in their life, small changes away from athletics, small changes to be a better academic student, small changes to be a better son, small changes to be a better teammate, small changes to be more trustworthy, small changes to get them off of a path that they had been on that was wrong, you know. I mean, people thought I was, my high school and college coaching friends thought I was berserk, but near the end of my career, I went back to junior high school. At the last of my public school career, I had a principal call me up and say, I've got this junior high school PE teaching job. It's going to be a brand new department. Everybody's left. You're going to bring in your own philosophy. You get to kind of be in on who you're going to bring in as your team members on this kind of a thing. You can coach any sports that you want, And Dana and I talked about it, and it was like, you know what? I love that age. I absolutely love that age. You're working with 14 and 15-year-olds. And it's not a lifestyle. I mean, the coaching isn't a lifestyle. The games are on the afternoons. You couldn't practice on weekends. You weren't allowed to practice on holidays. Right. I mean, there were times I was like, come on, I got 2 weeks here at dead time over Christmas. Let's get in the gym. You know, it's like, no, you can't do that. But anyway, so we went back there, and one of the reasons I think I love that age group is it was the age of decision making. It was the age of choosing a path.
Yeah.
And for a lot of those kids, you were the first non-father or mother that was coaching them. You were the first real coach.
Yeah.
Okay. Somebody outside, you know, that they didn't know that was involved in school. And I think one of the things I felt like when I was coaching those kids, I didn't have them for 3 years. I had them for at least 6 or more, because I could follow them right through high school. I could be right there with them all the way through the 3 years of junior high and the 3 years of high school, and then be with them as they left to go to college. And, you know, and so many of those kids stay in your life. But for me, when I was walking with those 14 and 15-year-old kids, there was a whole lot of, okay, stop, a little to your left. Okay, doing fine. Stop, slow down, a little to your right. So you're constantly guiding them through to stay on the correct path, where high school and college athletes, particularly college athletes, have have been on a path so long, it's really hard to take them off of it. Okay, it's hard to kind of get a hold of them and get them on the right path. So as college athletes, those kids, you don't recruit them. It's like there are so many other kids who are equally talented who aren't on that path of drugs or alcohol or poor academic effort or something like that. And so you don't recruit those kids. You know, selfishness, all kinds of different things. And you recruit the ones. High school is not that way. You got to kind of take what you've got, and then you can still not choose to keep them. But at the same time, trying to pull a kid out of a path that he's been on for 4 or 5 years is so much more difficult than pulling a kid off of a path he's only been on for 1 or maybe even less.
Yeah.
And so for me, that was one of the huge blessings with junior high school. I went back, and and then Dana came and taught at the same school in our PE department. And it was probably, I think I was in what I would call 2 great schools across the board in my career. And I think I taught and coached at like 7 or 8 different places. There are 2 that I was in, and one was the first one and one was the last one. And so it was like, okay, I like this. So the paycheck thing for me, the biggest paycheck is having kids stay in your life. You know? And I get calls or emails almost daily, Kyle, from kids saying, okay, I'm struggling with I'm the leader in this construction company, and I'm struggling with my team on this, coach, talk to me, or I get kids that are going through life struggles, or you get kids who want to come up and celebrate with you because they've just had some huge, great event happen in their life, and they attribute it back to the to the experience that they had. And they don't attribute it back to me. They attribute it back to the experience they had as an athlete on that particular team. That group of guys that I told you that comes to come up here on the 23rd.
Yeah.
When they first said they're coming, it was about 5 years ago. And I said, I'd love to see you guys, but I know you guys live all over the country. You don't need to try to all come on the same day. Okay, that's just too much to ask. So I said, just show up when you can. I'd love to see you. It'd be great. And they said, nope, we're all coming. We're all coming on the same day. So they all came except for two. Two didn't make it out. It was a basketball team of 14, and two didn't make it. One of them had passed away. So the three didn't make it. So one young man passed away, which was really sad. But the two that didn't make it, one was a high school principal who was taking his first vacation with his family in 20 years, and they were in Hawaii. Mm-hmm. And I was going, atta baby David, go sick him, And the other one was Dr. John Sakajima, who was actually in surgery that day. So, okay. You're excused.
Okay.
But it was so great. And meanwhile, those guys made it. It was so interesting to watch them. And many of these guys hadn't seen each other for 45 years, 50 years almost. And to watch them just go right back to the brotherhood, to the team feeling, to the same banter, to the same teasing, to the same kind of just absolute, just this love of who they were as 15-year-old boys playing on a junior high school basketball team. And I just sat back and just laughed all day long. It was just, and Dana just kept just shaking her head going, I can't even believe this. I can't believe this. They fell right back into who they were. And for those guys, I think every single one of them has gone on to be very successful. And almost every single one of them in conversations with me, whether they're in the group or whether they're private, attribute a lot of their success back to the stuff that they learned as a teammate and as a worker and as a leader or as a competitor at that age. And a whole lot of them went on to play at the college level.
Yeah.
And very honestly, they weren't a great undefeated team. I had a lot of championship teams. They were just above 500. Mm-hmm. But it wasn't the record that held them together. It was the way they felt about each other. It was the culture that they were part of.
Oh, that's awesome. Just let me sit with that. I think that there's something so magnificent about what sports and what allows people like you got the chance to stand in front of a bunch of young people. And I was listening to a podcast that you had done, we spoke about before we started recording here. And the idea that when you get, and actually I think Angus was the one who actually said this in the podcast, a quote, but I was like, wow, that's a really pretty cool, thought, which was, if you get the full attention of someone, you better have some really meaningful things to say, mm-hmm. and make sure that you're ready and armed with something that's going to be of impact for those people, And as I look at not only the context of what I want to do professionally and personally and in my family and really in every context, I want to be impactful, but I look around at the world that we're living in today, and I wonder how the concepts that I believe in, that you believe in, how we can bring those into building communities, even outside of sport, how I can bring that into every space so that people can have that feeling. Because what you're describing there, that common bond, I feel like for me is to me the most magical thing we do as humans, right? This creation of tribe around all of these principles and learning and connection, and sometimes misery and sometimes pain and sometimes celebration. Like, have you been able to really take all of the lessons that you've come into now, and outside of those athletic circles, does it have application elsewhere? How can it be brought into the world in other places?
Yes, we have. Again, I'd like to say it was by intention, but it wasn't. There's a couple of things there. One is oftentimes I tell parents this. It isn't important that your kid plays sports. It's only important that they find a passion. It can be choir. It can be dance. It can be debate. It could be drama. It could be FFA. I don't care what the passion is. As long as they find a passion. What you worry about is the dead-eyed kids. You worry about the ones who just haven't found their passion. And oftentimes the best teams in a school might not have anything to do with athletics. It might be in a single individual teacher's classroom that just has created a team situation where kids feel safe and empowered and in energy and, that kind of thing. So yes, I have learned along the way that almost everything we do applies to all kinds of different areas of life. Going back to Coach Wooden, after that Fresno Pacific convention or whatever, it was a clinic, they had the two of us sitting up on a stage and reporters asking questions. Well, they didn't care what Bruce Brown had to say, but they had asked me to sit up there. So here I'm sitting next to John Wooden.
Sure.
I'm not going to say a thing. That's what I'm thinking. I mean, because he was so magic. But one of the first questions they asked the two of us was, how much have kids changed in all your years of coaching? And I wasn't even thinking what I was going to say. I was thinking, I wonder what he's going to say. And it's so typical Coach Wooden. He goes, kids have changed very little. They're all born good. But he said, society has changed dramatically. And we need more than any other time that I can think of in my life. We need more people outside the family walking alongside of our kids as coaches, as mentors, as teachers, as pastors, and it's like, whew. In other words, our society the family has become not nearly as strong in too many cases. And so it becomes important that we have other people outside the family who believe in kids before they even believe in themselves, people who are going to hold them accountable, people who are going to love them enough to confront poor behavior, people who are going to say, I care too much about you to allow you to behave like that, and so that was one thing. And then as far as transferring to other stuff, I had no intention of going beyond teaching and coaching with our materials and concepts. But I got this phone call. It's from a woman, and she was asking about having me come down and do some work with her organization. And I thought it was a Little League mom, or something. I didn't know. So I said, well, where are you located? And she said, Seattle. And I said, so what's the address? And she gives me this downtown Seattle address. And I said, who are you and what do you do? She said, I'm a division leader at IBM. She said, we'd love to have you come down, and I'd love to have you come down and work with our other 36 division leaders from IBM. And honestly, Kyle, I said, ma'am, no offense at all intended, but I have no idea what you do, and I really don't care. I'm a coach. I care about coaching and kids. She said, no, one of our division leaders heard you at a coaching clinic and said everything he said about team and about leadership and that kind of stuff all applied to exactly what we do. And I said, I'll only be able to use athletic analogy. She said, we can make the transfer.
There you go.
And I said, okay. So that's where it started. And that's opened up a ton of doors with people, large and small companies, construction companies, medical field, fire departments. I mean, it's been crazy. Very honestly, we found somebody who loves that. We found somebody who understands and applied all of our stuff in coaching as a coach. And she was an unbelievably successful coach and started a program from scratch, from zero history and no success to just state championship after state, using the concepts. And she has left teaching and gone into business. And so we found this perfect person to kind of come in and say, I understood it as a coach and I understand it as a business leader. And so, because I'd honestly would rather be with kids.
Yeah.
And I'd rather be with coaches. I enjoy the feedback you get from working with businesses, but if they made me choose, if I had two different options, I'd always choose kids.
Got it.
So this is her passion, and she's phenomenal.
Who is that? What is it?
Her name is Corinne Immel.
Okay.
And she was a dance coach.
Okay.
And just phenomenal person, really bright, very articulate, very, very, very caring, but strong, really strong in her beliefs, and strong, really a strong knowledge of everything we do. So, yeah,
That's great.
she's great.
She's taken all the business fork of the business, if you will. Okay.
And she'll bring in Rob to do specific presentations, and then she'll be the follow-up person, the kind of the person that does one-on-one stuff or maybe group stuff. But how can we apply that in our area? Kind of a person. So,
two things came to mind as I was listening to those last ones. One, you've worked with professional athletes and their coaching staffs at the very highest level, collegiate athletes and their staffs at the very pinnacle of their sport. And you have worked with junior high Steven, who his backpack is hanging open and he needs to use a little bit more deodorant as he passes through the locker room. Like, I wonder how, I'm really passionate about it. When I had the chance to look at the relationships I was able to form with athletes who are now in very esteemed places in the world, I just realized for myself, man, I can see this kid as a junior high school kid. I had no idea that I would show up and find these athletes to be just young people that are now playing in the NFL or the NBA or these places. But I wonder, like, what is the common thread that you see, and how do you experience that young person from junior high to the very pinnacle of sport?
Well, I've been really blessed to work with some very high level coaches and athletes. And the truth is they make the same mistakes. They just make them bigger and faster.
Okay.
Physically, it's a lot of the same corrections, physical and skill stuff. Not a lot, but some of it is. But the behavioral stuff is exactly the same. And for most of them, when you're dealing with a 14-year-old kid who hasn't been on the wrong path very long, it's one thing. But when you're dealing with a 28-year-old guy who's been able to stay on that path because of his talent, and his talent has allowed him to behave in ways that don't make that person a good teammate. Yeah. And they've been entitled because of their talent, and they've been rewarded by their talent by so much money. So first of all, I don't care how much they make. All I care about is getting into their heart.
Got it.
And so, I don't know if I could have done what I've done with some of the professional level and even the college level teams when I was younger, without being a coach, without being one of their coaches. But I think having gray hair helps. Having white hair, you're kind of coming in and you're a grandpa. So you're this non-threatening person walking in, and they all like, oh, I hope this guy doesn't die while he's talking to us. And so, it's been funny to work with some of the teams that we've been involved with for a number of years.
Yeah.
Is they kind of really look forward to you coming back, and they'll share stuff with you because you develop a level of trust.
Yeah.
And they do see as non-threatening. I'm not going to determine their playing time. I'm not going to do anything. I'm only there because I care about them. And I care about them making some changes that's going to make them a better dad, or that's going to make them a better teammate, that's going to make them a better citizen. And other thing about being old is I don't worry what anybody thinks. I don't worry what they think. I try to just be as absolutely truthful with people as possible. I don't let them slide. I don't let them escape. I don't let them make excuses. I just bring them right back. And I think one of the things that's benefited us the most is learning, having to deal with junior high school kids and dealing with issues there. Is a lot of times they'll try to raise the emotional level. That's the way they win arguments. They do that at home. They raise the emotional stakes, and all of a sudden you get into this. And one of the things I learned with dealing with junior high school kids is, nope, look them in the eye and calm truth, and don't back away.
Okay.
And it's, I care too much about you, and I care too much about our team to allow you to behave like that, to allow you to continue to be that selfish with that particular behavior, or to be, be filled with excuses or whatever it might be. And just this calm truth. And they know after a while, he's not going to quit. He's not going to back away. And so I have a decision I'm going to make. And then when they make those changes, that you just really make sure that you give them ownership of those changes. Look who you've become. Look who you've become, a trusted teammate. And I think with older athletes, it isn't a whole lot different than with younger ones. But when I'm say for going to work with a professional athlete that on a team that they've identified some challenging behaviors, you're not trying to get rid of the person, you're trying to get rid of the behavior. Yeah. And so, I'll often start with them by saying, do you want to be a trusted teammate? It's important for you to be a good teammate. It's important for you to be trusted by your teammates. And it's pretty hard for a guy to say, no, I don't care. And so pretty much you got him on the opening thing, okay. So if that's true, let's talk about some things that I've observed that are hurting your trust or that are hurting your ability to be able to be a good teammate. And I think you're appealing to something bigger than them. And anybody who's playing a team sport, and even individual sports that are like team sports, I think everybody wants to be trusted. Everybody wants to be appreciated. I mean, it's just what Oprah says. Everybody wants to be valued. Well, let's figure out how you can do that. Let's see how you can be a valuable member of this particular team. And by the way, if you do that, it's going to help us win too.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. One of the things that, man, it's really easy for me to get, I have my point, but I thought I would put this in here. It's super easy for me to get lost in my last question because I just get into, I'm just traveling in the space. And the answer that you have the last time that I think, man, where do I want to go now? Here's one that has always been, that I've, from the first moment I picked up, my interpretation of what you were teaching me, and our staff was this idea of, and I love to say my good friend Bruce Brown said, I'm going to put my elbows up on the fence and I'm going to watch what your values are, right? Mm-hmm. That your values and action are really what we're after, and so I've tried to impart that everywhere is like, okay, if I show up, I want to be able to see that these are the actual values. I'm just going to lean up against the fence and I'm going to watch you move about. This could be a poor generalization of a much deeper topic that that I feel like you've taught me, but I tried to take values and action and put them into every context of my business, of my life. And I wonder, how have you guided your life around values and action, and maybe, or your business? Like, how have you used that in your own circles? Is this a decent enough question? Am I framing that up okay?
Yeah. Well, I think you have to know your why. I mean, that book Simon Sinek on Start With Why might be one of the most important books you could read if you're in a leadership position or if you're trying to make a difference. You got to know what your why is. What's your purpose? And then what do you stand for? And your standards or your values or your covenants or your virtues or whatever you want to call them. There's a couple of things that need to happen with those. You need to be able to understand what they mean, and then you need to understand what they look like. And then they need to hold up under pressure. Okay? So pressure or situations aren't going to change who you are. I was reading, one of the things we say is, you can adjust your principles to meet your actions, or you can adjust your actions to meet your principles. Yeah. And so there are an awful lot of people in this world that adjust their principles to meet the things that they've done. Yeah. And what we need is more people that are going to adjust their actions to fall in line, be in line with their principles, their personal beliefs. And I think that having a foundation like that, I think is essential. One of my goals is to become a better and better follower of Christ. Okay. So for me, every time I start getting, questions, I just turn back and get grounded again, in the Bible. And, your foundational beliefs allow you to be at peace. They allow you to always be able to tell the truth because you don't have to ever make anything up. They allow you to be strong and humble. If hopefully, you're not like, okay, this is the only way, you're humble enough to listen and to learn and try to improve all the time. But at the same time, you have these foundational beliefs that should guide you in everything you're doing, every single thing. One of the things we talk about is on great teams, once they've decided what they stand for and once they've decided what that looks like in action, then every time you have any kind of a decision to make, you simply just filter it through your beliefs.
Yeah.
And one of the things we talk about when we're talking about integrity is integrity is not easy, but it's simple. Integrity as a life value or a life virtue. Integrity is not easy, but it's simple. If you're a person of integrity, you're still going to be faced with the same number of ethical dilemmas in your life. You're still going to have, they don't just jump over you, because you're a nun or a pastor or whatever they're doing. You're still going to be faced with the same number of ethical dilemmas. And so, but it's simpler because every time you face one of those ethical dilemmas, you simply just have to ask yourself, what's the right thing to do? If you're a person of integrity, what's the right thing to do right here, right now? And then how simple is that? What a simple way to live. So your life becomes simpler. Not easier, but simpler. And I think that has been really good for me. I think the other thing for me is having the right life partner. I mean, Dana's my hero. I mean, she's such a strong woman of faith and strong in her beliefs and strong in her actions. And I mean, she's just magical, for me. And just, so that's a huge part of it. When you have a partner like that, it keeps you on the straight and narrow.
Sure. Yeah, she's wonderful.
She is the voice of reason, and thankful for that. Wonderful.
I wonder, you're mentioning your faith and your desire to follow Christ closer. One of the things so when I was a sophomore in high school, I took the ASVAB. You'll remember the ASVAB test, the old military battery test that they'd have sophomores take. And then you would take the test, and then they would come back with these scores, and they'd be all this like coding or whatever, and they would give you this list of, these are the jobs that based on who you've come to be, these are the things that you should do. So we get everybody's in the class, and we get all these different things, and we're like looking at like, oh, this is job 1 for you, job 2, job 3. These are the things you're supposed to get, right? And I'm a sophomore, hot-headed athlete kid chasing girls, these kind of things. This is me. And you know what was number 1 on that list for me, Bruce?
Pastor.
Pastor. And I'm like, I was a Catholic kid growing up. There's zero chance that this guy is going to be a priest, right? This was my only religious framework at that point. I'm going to be a priest? There is no way that that's going to be the case. And as I move through my life, more and more, I realize like every bit of the parts of what it seems to me that I feel that God's vocation and the call on my life has been is just that. Now, forget context and venue. And so my question here is like, I really feel that deeply, that's where that vocation is coming from. And I feel like every instance where I've tried now, in hindsight, what is that, 25 plus years ago or maybe more than that, 30 years ago almost. Every step that took me away from that direction has seemingly been turned around. And so as I look at what I do with my gym, as I look at what I do in nearly every relationship I find myself in, I look around the gym that I have and I pray for it every day. And I just ask God to bring the people that he would have to be served in that place. And it's become that space. And so the same thing with the rest of the world, right? Whether I'm in any venue, in any context. So the question here, without me going on any longer, is have you felt that in your life? Do you feel like you're ministering to people through your work?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Everything I've done has been a calling. I've just followed my heart. There isn't anything. When I took that test, they said teacher, coach, or military.
Oh, really?
And I told you one of my other uncles was a pilot.
Yeah, exactly.
And so I really wanted to go to Air Force.
Yeah.
And I did my vision. At that time, you needed 20/20 vision to get into Air Force Academy. and that kept me out. And
Yeah.
I otherwise I probably would have had a career in flying.
Yeah.
But yes, absolutely called to this. And like I said, it's a mission, it's about the mission, not the money. And that's been the basis of every single thing that we've done. The book I wrote that's called Teaching Character Through Sport, Developing a Positive Coaching Legacy. When I first wrote that, it was called Call to Coach.
Yeah.
And our publisher, who I really like, we're good friends. We're very different, but we're good friends. He called me and he said, Bruce, I need to change the title of the book. And I said, why? He said, because you are limiting the number of people that will buy it based upon the title. And I said, I don't believe that. And he said, well, I'm the one that's selling them, and I believe it. And I said, nope, not changing it. He said, sorry, it's not your call. I'm the publisher. I'm the,
Wow.
and he did it in a nice way,
Right.
but basically saying, no, we're going to change this, So in the meantime, I've written one of my booklets is called Call to Coach and Inspire. And it's basically has to do with tying those things together. But yeah, I felt called. I felt called all the time. And I think that gets you through the tough times. When you felt like you're doing what you're called to do, what you were gifted to do. God gives us all different gifts. And when you feel like you're using the gifts that you've been given, I'm not saying there aren't hard days, but you get pulled through those hard days.
Yeah.
Because you always fall back into, I would do this for nothing.
Yeah.
Okay. I would do this for nothing.
Yeah.
And so, I haven't had very many days that I didn't love what I did.
Yeah.
And I don't know how many people can say that.
Yeah. I was going to say, you're so fortunate.
Somebody said, are you going to retire? I said, retire from what? My dad, when my dad near the end of my dad and mom's life, they moved up here with us, and I lived with an angel who took care of them. And, but I was traveling so much, and my dad, I'd come back and you'd just be exhausted from the travel and go. And I kind of just usually crash for a day. And my dad, he'd go, how can you be tired? All you do is talk. Because he did a lot of labor in his day, How can you be tired? All you do is talk. And it's like, I agree with that, Dad. I shouldn't be tired. So, and he'd always laugh. But yeah.
Well, Bruce, I couldn't be more grateful to you for one, just the model that you've provided, that I might be able to believe that I could live a life of impact in a small chip sort of way, whenever I get, and if I can find a way to impact as many people as it's clear that you have, I'll be very pleased with with the efforts of my life. I really want to be able to, the word I've tried to use this year and really meditate on is surrender, and really feeling that vocational call. I've been so aspirational in my life at times that it's been really easy to get off path. And so I've tried to relinquish the control and to surrender and understand where opportunity is. I hope that I'm on the right path. I hope that the calling that I really feel and the prayers that I send up are as genuine as I believe them to be, so that, and that whatever providence that I need will arrive when it's due. But, I'm just really grateful to know that you have existed, and that the model is something that, I as you were saying the story about John, someday, somewhere down the line, if I'm able to ever sit next to you on a stage, no one would ask me a question, but I'd be really honored to be sitting next to you.
Let me finish with another John Wooden story.
Yeah.
And this might be my favorite one. So I was a fairly young coach. I think I was 24. And he was in the midst of maybe I was a little older than that, but he was in the midst of his championship run at UCLA. And they used to have what's called medalist clinics. Medalist must have been a company of some kind that sponsored coaching clinics. And they'd bring in lots and lots of different coaches to speak on all different sports. It was an all sports clinic. And Coach Wooden was there speaking. And he was speaking, his topic title was Random Digressions. But anyway, I'm sitting there and I'm thinking, okay, so when I saw that he was there, he was a keynote, so there wasn't anybody else speaking when he was speaking.
Sure.
So I'm there and I am just writing down notes as fast as I can write them down, because he was talking basically philosophy, and I'm just writing stuff down. And it was one of the things that got me on this path. Dean Smith was another one that got me on this path at a very young age. And I got a chance to tell him thank you and show him the actual notes that I took in 1969. So anyway, so here's Coach Wooden speaking, and I'm watching him thinking, here is maybe the greatest coach that's ever lived, But I'm looking at it and I'm thinking, man, he's old. I don't know how much longer he's going to be alive, because he's like 64 or something like that.
Sure.
And so I'm thinking, man, so I'm not an autograph guy, but I want to go shake his hand.
Sure.
And so right as the thing ends, man, I bolt for the door, knowing which side he was going to go out. I bolt for the door, thinking, I just want to go shake his hand.
Yeah.
And so I get out there and there's like 50 other guys in line.
Yeah.
Okay, already.
Yeah.
And so I'm thinking, I don't care. I'll wait it out. I just want to shake his hand.
Yeah.
So as I'm getting closer and closer, I'm getting nervous.
Yeah.
I mean, there he is, and he's greeting every single person and talking to every single person. And I'm thinking, whoa. And so now I'm thinking, what am I going to say to him? And so I get up there and he reaches out his hand to shake my hand. I said, hi, Coach Wooden. I said, I'm Bruce Brown. I said, I'm Bruce Brown. I'm just really honored to meet you. He said, where do you coach, Bruce? I said, Hayek Junior High School in Bellevue, Washington. He goes, junior high school? I go, yeah. He goes, whoa, that must be really great, And I said, well, so now he's got me talking. So I said, Coach Wooden, we actually use your pyramid of success in our football program. You do? How do you use it? Now, how do you present it? And he's talking to me. I mean, seriously, Kyle, the whole conversation probably didn't last 45 seconds. Okay. But I mean, I go out to the parking lot. I get in my little Volkswagen Bug that I'm driving at that time. And I'm driving home on the freeway. And I mean, I'm about 15 feet off the ground. I mean, the hair in my arms is standing straight up. I talked to John Wooden. I mean, I'm not only met, I talked to him.
Yeah.
And I'm just thinking, oh my goodness. And so it was like a thrill of a lifetime for me. About 2 weeks later, I get this envelope with a UCLA postmark on it. Okay. And it said, Coach Bruce Brown, Bellevue Junior High, Bellevue, Washington. Okay. So it wasn't Hayek Junior High, but okay. And inside is a signed copy of the Pyramid of Success.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, wait a minute. Wait. Here's a guy that's the greatest coach ever, but yet so humble. He stands outside and greets everybody that wants to talk to him after he's just given us a whole bunch of his energy. And these days, they escort those guys off so they have to interact with any peons. I mean, seriously, I've had to do that with me. And I go, no.
Yeah.
And here he is out there greeting anybody that wants to talk, stayed as long as he wanted to talk. And he not only does that, he remembers me. He remembers my name. He remembers about where I taught, and he remembers what we talked about.
Yeah.
And then he took the time to send it. I mean, and so I went down to whatever the little hardware store was in town, bought a little $1.98 black frame, because that's all I could afford.
Yeah.
Put it in that black frame, best wishes, John Wooden, the Pyramid of Success. And I kept that on my wall in my office everywhere I went and every time I look at it, I think, how can somebody that's that great be so humble? How can I ever turn a kid down?
Yeah.
How can I ever turn a kid down who comes in and says, Coach, I'd like to have some help with my free throws. Oh no, I'm eating lunch. Hey, Coach, gee, I'd really like to talk to you. I got an issue going on in my life. Well, can you catch me in a different? No, it was like, okay, that was one of the best lessons in leadership and humility that I've ever experienced, and it happened to me. And it was like, and I still have the thing framed in my office. It's still in the exact same frame. I never changed it. It takes me right back to where I was at that time. And so I think, for me, having people like that and experiences like that in my life, I was really blessed to have that happen when I was young. I think I would have probably gotten where I was going to go eventually, but it really was it shortcut the learning curve for me. and kind of go, hey, why are you really doing this?
Yeah.
Why are you coaching? What are you, is it about you? Is it about championships? Is it about relationship and making a difference in kids' lives? So for me, that was, I just was right place, right time. Again, God's hand on the whole thing.
Well, that's where we'll end it. That was quite a story. Thanks for your time, Bruce.
Thank you, buddy. It's really always fun to be with you.
Thank you for tuning in to this episode of Know Your Leading Edge podcast with your host, Kyle Vierck. For more information or to check us out on the web, please visit leafgym.com. Learn character from the tree, values from the roots, and change from the leaf.